Let's not stand on ceremony here.
Dark Knight Rises is a 2012 superhero film directed by Christopher Nolan, who co-wrote the film with his brother Jonathan Nolan and frequent collaborator David S. Goyer. It is the final installment in Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy and the sequel to The Dark Knight in 2008. The film stars Christian Bale as Batman Bruce Wayne alongside Michael Caine, Gary Oldman, Anne Hathaway, Tom Hardy, Marion Cotillard, Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Morgan Freeman. 8 years after the event of The Dark Knight, the revolutionary Bane forces Bruce Wayne to resume his role as Batman and save Gotham City from nuclear destruction. Christopher Nolan was hesitant about returning to the series for a third film, but agreed to after developing a story with his brother and Goyer that he felt would conclude the series on a satisfactory note. Nolan drew inspiration from Bane's comic book debut in 1993 Nightfall storyline, the 1986 series The Dark Knight Returns, and the 1999 storyline No Man's Land. Filming took place from May to November 2011 in locations including Jaipur, London, Nottingham, Glasgow, Los Angeles, New York City, Newark, and Pittsburgh. Nolan used an IMAX 70mm film cameras for much of the filming, including the first 6 minutes of the film, to optimize the quality of the picture. A vehicle variation of the Batplane and the Batcopter, termed the Bat, an underground prison set, and a new Batcave set were created specifically for the film. As with The Dark Knight, a viral marketing campaign began early during production. When filming concluded, Warner Brothers refocused its campaign, developing promotional websites, releasing the first 6 minutes of the film, screening theatrical trailers, and sending out information regarding the film's plot. Now, The Dark Knight Rises is a good film, but unfortunately it will always live in the shadow of The Dark Knight. I think Nolan wanted to go out with a bang. And first he seemed reluctant to make this movie after the death of Heath Ledger. And you can tell. This movie he was sort of second-guessing himself and decided to go all in and almost tries too hard. As is often the case with sequels after a phenomenal film, they do sometimes let us down. Now, the themes in Dark Knight Rises have often been considered complex. Bane has almost been compared to revolutionary figures like Che Guevara. He's a revolutionary villain, a liberator of pain as he describes himself. I particularly liked Jonathan Chait's opinion in The New York. The Dark Knight Rises passes for right-wing movies these days, which admits the rather modest premise that irritating though the rich may be, actually killing them and taking all their stuff may be excessive. Some people cited that the film criticizes the Occupy movement, which Nolan vehemently denied. Nolan said, "I've had so many conversations with people who have seen the film the other way around. We throw a lot of things against the wall and see if it sticks. We put a lot of interesting questions in the air, but that simply is a backdrop for the story. What we're really trying to do is show the cracks of society, show the conflicts that somebody would try to wedge open. We're going into widely different interpretations of what the film is supporting and not supporting. But it's not doing any of these things. It's just telling a story." If you're saying, have you made a film that's supposed to be criticizing the Occupy Wall Street movement? Well, obviously that's not true. Some even compared the film to like a sort of modern French Revolution. On January 20th, 2017, multiple media outlets noted that a small but key part of US President at the time, Donald Trump's inaugural address, had an uncanny echo of Bane's speech after he takes control of Gotham in The Dark Knight Rises. Trump had given a positive review of the film in 2012, and in 2019, Warner Brothers threatened legal action after Trump used the film's score for a 2020 campaign video without permission. According to Matthew Rosa of Salon, the Christopher Nolan directed film, and more specifically its fascist revolutionary villain Bane, has been referenced in racist hate speech directed against Black Lives Matter protests by popular alt-right site Virginia Dare and throughout the far-right corners of the internet. Now, the Bane character is quite fascinating to look at. Here is a man that considers himself a freedom fighter. But of course, as always goes, one man's freedom fighter is another man's terrorist. He's been excommunicated from the League of Shadows, and according to costume designer Linda Hemming, the character wears a mask that supplies him with analgesic gas to relieve the pain he suffers from an injury sustained earlier in the story. Hardy intended to portray the character as more menacing than Robert Swenson's version of the character in Joel Schumacher's Batman and Robin, and then in order to do so, his portrayal entailed creating a contradiction between his voice and his body. Hardy gained 30 pounds or 14 kgs for the role, increasing his weight to 90 kgs. Hardy based Bane's voice on several influences, which include Batley Gorman, the character's movie book heritage. Bane claims his revolutionary enemies are rich and corrupt, who he contends are oppressing the people. Bane can almost be considered a pro-communist character. He wants equality for everyone. He wants everybody to be treated fairly and equally. but his means about going about this are violent, autocratic, and frankly, quite frightening. And for me, he's just a dictator in disguise, hiding behind the idea that he wants freedom for all. Now, the casting of Tom Hardy to play the role of Bane in this version was a fantastic choice. Tom Hardy is a superb actor. Albeit some people criticized the vocal style he used for the film, I thought it added perfectly to this role. This was a completely different version of Bane from the comic books, but he still had the physical presence that he's known for in the comic canon. If the Joker was a cerebral antagonist to Batman, then Bane is a physical one. The fight that the two have on the bridge, where Bane recreates the scene from the famous comic book, breaking Batman's back in two, is powerful and moving, as is his death scene. Now let's get to the character of Miranda Tate, or later Talia al Ghul, a recently promoted member of the Wayne Enterprises Executive Board who encourages a still grieving Bruce to rejoin society and continue his father's philanthropic work. But as later revealed, she is the daughter of Ra's al Ghul, played by Liam Neeson in The Batman Begins, and Bane's accomplice. Her name, of course, is Talia al Ghul. Now the story of Talia al Ghul in the comics is quite a fascinating one. She, of course, is the daughter of one of Batman's arch-enemies, but they do form a relationship. And in some comic book canon, she is the mother of Batman's son, Damian Wayne. She is often depicted as an anti-heroine that is constantly torn between being an ally or an enemy to Batman, due to loyalty to both him and her father. Now in this film, the character is well fleshed out. I did like the twist at the end where Miranda Tate reveals who she really is, and her close connection to the Bane character, making him almost seem a beast to her beauty. Cotillard is an excellent actress and portrays the character very well, although I have one gripe, the death scene at the end. I just found it very hammy and very corny, the way she just closes her eyes and suddenly drifts away. The other new addition which I really liked was of course Anne Hathaway as Selina Kyle, Catwoman, a professional cat burglar, grifter and femme fatale who establishes a playful, teasing relationship with Wayne that takes some of the somberness away from his character and pursues a clean slate, a computer program rumored to be able to erase a person's criminal history.
Storm coming, Mr. Wayne.
She eventually crosses paths with both Wayne and Batman and sides with him towards the end of the film. Hathaway auditioned not knowing what role she was being considered for. Hathaway described the role as being the most physically demanding she had ever played, and confessed that while she thought of herself as being fit, she had to redouble her efforts to keep up with the demands for the role. Now, I quite enjoyed the interpretation from Nolan of the Catwoman character. She maybe wasn't as feisty and as sexy, say, as in the Batman Returns movie played by Michelle Pfeiffer, but here she was realistic, the atypical, conflicted character, wanting to do right, but forced to do wrong. She has skills, she has talents, and she wants to carve a place for herself in the world. I also like the sense of realism they brought to the Catwoman's costume, with eye goggles acting as her ears, as it were, when she placed them on her head. I enjoyed the chemistry between Hathaway and Bale, although it probably could have been further established, and it was nowhere near the tension that you saw in Batman Returns between Batman and Catwoman. The one new addition I really didn't care for was Joseph Gordon-Levitt as John Blake. I've never been a massive fan of Joseph Gordon-Levitt's acting. He always comes across like he's trying too hard, and for me this character really is just somewhat irritating. John Blake is a young police officer whose instincts lead him to believe that there's trouble on the horizon, and is promoted to detective by Gordon, where the elder cop saw something of himself within the younger. Blake represents the idealism of Gordon and Bruce Wayne once held, but soon lost in their battle against the crime in the city. The film reveals his legal name to be Robin John Blake, a homage to Batman's sidekick in the comics, Robin. Now, Nolan had stated, and Christian Bale, that they would never include a Robin character within their Dark Knight trilogy. But to do it this way, where his legal name now technically is Robin, I don't know, I just found it a bit corny. With regards to the returning cast members, Christian Bale is brilliant once again as Bruce Wayne Batman, and really goes out with a bang. Nolan had stated that due to the 8-year gap between The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises, he's an older Bruce Wayne. He's not in a great state. Bale employed a martial arts discipline called the Casey fighting method throughout the series, and now modified it for Wayne's current state and Bane's style. Bale acknowledged that Batman is not a healthy individual. This is somebody that is doing good, but is living right on the edge of doing bad. Bale clarified that he doesn't want to forget his parents' deaths. He wants to maintain that anger that he felt, that injustice. Bale felt bittersweet about leaving the franchise, saying that it was like saying goodbye to an old friend. And completing Batman's story arc in this trilogy was perfect, from the young man we see in Batman Begins to the older, jaded version of Batman what we see in The Dark Knight Rises. I do love the ending where he's sitting in an Italian cafe with his now, would believe, lover, Catwoman, and he sees Michael Caine's Alfred from a distance, and they just nod their heads at each other. It's a fitting ending to this fantastic portrayal of Batman. Michael Caine returns once again as Alfred Pennyworth, who remains as a father figure to Wayne, but is unable to accept Wayne's desire to revive his Batman persona, even resigning from his position to impress the seriousness of his position upon him. Christopher Nolan emphasized the emotional bond between Pennyworth and Wayne, stressing its importance in the previous films, and predicting that the relationship would be strained, as it never had been before. Gary Oldman returns as James Gordon, the now commissioner of the Gotham City Police Department and one of the city's few honest police officers. Oldman described the character's work in cleaning up Gotham City as having left a world weary and slightly bored, likening to Gordon, to a soldier who leaps at the chance to be on the front lines. His life has taken a turn for the worse since The Dark Knight. His wife has left him and taken their children, and the mayor is planning to dismiss him from his job. Gordon feels guilty of his role in covering up Harvey Dent's crimes and is prepared to resign from his position as commissioner over it, but then senses that Gotham is about to come under stress. Once again, Gary Oldman is superb in the role, and I love the story arc throughout the 3 films of Gordon's character. Unfortunately, on July 20th, 2012, during a midnight showing of The Dark Knight Rises at the Century Cinema in Aurora, Colorado, a gunman wearing a gas mask opened fire inside the theater, killing 12 people and injuring 58 others. Police responding to the shooting apprehended the suspect, later identified as 24-year-old James Engen Holmes. Initial reports stated that Holmes identified himself as the Joker at the time of his arrest, though this has been since debunked. Warner Brothers cancelled the Paris, Mexico and Japan premieres of The Dark Knight Rises and suspended the film's marketing campaign in Finland. Several broadcast networks also suspended television ads for the film in the United States. The trailer for Gangster Squad, another Warner Brothers movie including the screening of The Dark Knight Rises, was removed as it contained scenes which showed gangsters shooting submachine guns at moviegoers through the screen, similar to the shooting in Aurora. Director Christopher Nolan released a public statement calling the shooting an unbearably savage act. Other stars of the film released statements expressing their condolences, with star Christian Bale paying a personal visit to the survivors and the memorial in Aurora. Now, The Dark Knight Rises is a good movie, a bit overdone, but with some strong characters and some superb performances, particularly from Tom Hardy. I liked the introduction of Selina Kyle, and I liked the twisted story of Talia al Ghul. I didn't particularly like the Blake character, but unfortunately it's one of those films that will always live in the shadow of its perfect predecessor, and it is definitely the weakest in the trilogy. The Dark Knight Rises gets an 8 out of 10.